Big news! Sephora is now on Uber Eats. So if you find yourself facing a beauty emergency, like needing a last-minute gift, or you're just out of your favorite mascara, again, don't panic. We got you. Order now and get $10 off on Sephora orders of $50 or more on the Uber Eats app. Order now. Offer ends October 30th. One order per customer. Additional terms apply. See app for availability. Delivery fees may apply.
This episode is brought to you by Indeed. When your computer breaks, you don't wait for it to magically start working again. You fix the problem. So why wait to hire the people your company desperately needs? Use Indeed's sponsored jobs to hire top talent fast. And even better, you only pay for results. There's no need to wait. Speed up your hiring with a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
This episode is brought to you by Nature's Bounty. Nature's Bounty believes your body is brilliant, naturally designed to thrive, inside and out. For those always looking for new ways to support your health from head to heels, Nature's Bounty has a range of over 400 vitamins and supplements born from 50 years of trust and care. Nature's Bounty. It's in your nature. Visit naturesbounty.com to learn more.
Matt, this one's a Matt Kelly scheduling fuck up because this Behind the Music we should have done like 2 albums ago.
It's true. He is promoting
Running with Scissors.
Of it. But I mean, of course, like up until that point, it kind of doesn't matter. Like you're just watching it as if it's just this. I mean, it's a Behind the Music. It's which I remember so fondly from my early days of watching VH1 and MTV.
We're gonna talk a little bit about that in a second. I do want to explain how I screwed this up.
Okay, go ahead. Defend yourself to the public.
Well, usually when I go to figure out like what TV show appearances and stuff did Al do, I'll like check his Wikipedia and I'll check his IMDb. But the one thing I don't check on his IMDb is anything where Al is listed as himself. Like, because 99% of those are just like, Al performed on this TV show, Al performed on this TV show. And that's like not really what we burn energy on, because usually if he's performed, there's a high profile TV performance of a song, we mention it when we do that song.
Yes. And
a lot of the times the stuff like Weird Al Can't Go Home, like those still show up not as like Al playing himself, but as like an actual project. For some reason, this did not, because I guess it's more documentary than like the things that have a narrative structure. So it was literally the other day, I was like, I can't believe we haven't had to do the Behind the Music yet. And then I was like, oh, we are well past where VH1 was airing Behind the Music by this point. So I had to throw it in there. But yeah, man, you and I talked about this in an episode that'll come out a little bit later with our guest, but this stuff takes me back to just how good we had it in the late 90s when it was like, I could have just lived on VH1, MTV, Nickelodeon, and Comedy Central. Like, those are the only 4 channels I truly needed at any given moment. Maybe E for Talk Soup, and like that was it. Like, that provided so much enjoyment. And I'm watching this and I'm like, what do we not need to know the behind the stories on any bands over the last 25 years? I feel like there's it's just an untapped market, and I love the format of Behind the Music.
The format is, I think, the thing I miss the most, because I mean, these do exist, you know, like there's people doing their, like, you know, go on YouTube and do a search and you'll find like
Todd in the
people's
Shadows.
Exactly. These channels that run like the real story. I mean, my God, Wheatus has one that was made by Vice a few years ago.
Incredible.
It's really, really well done. This guy did it independently. Funny enough, his name is Dan, I believe. And he now owns that footage himself, and we've worked with him on other things. But he made this incredible video about some of the backstory of Teenage Dirtbag that has done really, really well for us.
I think that this is like, because I've talked about how I would love to do like a one-hit Thunder TV show. Yeah. And I feel like my version of that would be a blend of like Behind the Music meets I Love the 80s. You know what I mean? Where it's like, it is this deep dive into the career, but it's also these talking heads with people who are like tangentially related. Like, I love, for a person that we haven't talked about hardly at all on this show, Joel Miller. Like, the amount of Joel Miller that is interviewed in this, who kind of gives you so much more context on like Al's childhood through a lens that Al wouldn't talk about. Like,
yes.
Like,
well, we should just say right out the gate, because we've covered so many of these things. Like, this might be the most accurate Weird Al biography that exists.
Oh, for sure. And it's very sincere Al throughout.
It's generally very sincere. I mean, Al will turn it into joke things. Like, there's moments where he is making fun of this entire format in a way that I actually love. Like, the joke that's embedded in one of the bumpers about him crying into his hands about how...
Oh, I wrote it down verbatim. He says, he goes, my 7th album only went gold instead of platinum, so I had to buy the medium jacuzzi.
Yeah, so he is making fun of the form of these things, which, again, as we know, like, that's what Weird is. That's what the complete Al is him mocking this like life story biography of a musician.
But he does take it more seriously than any of those other things. Yeah,
he absolutely does.
There's a couple cool quotes even before, like, there's like that 2-minute prelude before the behind the music theme, and we get a clip of I think it's Doug from the Knack, who says, if Al didn't exist, someone else would have had to invent him. Like, just talking about like the significance of Al in music.
Yes, I love that. Oh my God.
And then the commentary says, for the next hour, we're going to talk about America's most celebrated nerd.
I know, the voiceover is fantastic as well. The number of, like, I feel like for most of this, the big things I wrote down were just incredible quotes.
Dude, that's because we know most of this information. It's about some of the quotes in there. The first quote, and I hope to God you also wrote this down, but we
write down the same quote.
We get the behind the music intro, and then it cuts to Emo Phillips, and he's the first person to talk after the intro, and he says, you know how when you pee into a toilet, it sounds like someone telling you to kill Weird Al Yankovic?
I did write that down. I also loved, I feel like this was even before the opening. It was just like the pre-roll thing or whatever, and because it came up later, Dr. Demento, Barry Hansen saying that Al is, quote, puncturing the pomposity of pop music. And I was like, oh my God,
the alliteration.
You genius. Yeah. What a line. Puncturing the pomposity of pop music.
I love it so much.
Incredible.
I wrote down verbatim probably the most famous line that Al, well, there's a pretty famous Devo line from this too, but I think the most famous Al line, where they say even Al finds humor in the idea that we're doing a behind the music on him, and he says, he rattles us off at rapid speed. He goes, well, I never slept with a band member. I've never crippled a band member. I never stayed on a boat for a 3-day heroin binge. I never had a weight problem. I never slept with so many women I lost count. I never lip synced to any of my songs except for in my music videos. I was never an alcoholic. I never became the poster child for smoking marijuana. I never married my 14-year-old cousin. So what do you want from me?
Yeah, it's great. It's just very much, I think it is a combination of Al being very modest and humble, and Al also just having this inherent, I don't think the word, like, I almost said disdain, and I don't think that's fair, because I don't think Al has that much like hate in his heart, but just like how silly he finds celebrity culture generally. Yeah. The idea that like this is all we want to talk about is Al's like sex life or his drug use, or like it's just all silly to him.
I think you get two sides of that Al coin, right? Because we get this story. They talk about the Coolio circumstance, and we get this, I think, a very beautiful story where Al basically says, like, I wrote a letter to him explaining the situation, and I never really heard back, but I hope that he's still not angry at me. That, like, shows that he's a good person. And then it's almost immediately after that, we get this clip from a different piece of Al media where Al goes, like, no, fame hasn't changed me. I was always a self-absorbed, arrogant snob. Like, it's like there's these two sides of him where it's like he is the nicest man in the world who just wants everyone to be happy and everyone to be peaceful, but simultaneously loves playing this character of Al Yankovic who is the most like it's kind of the Paul Rubens to Pee Wee Herman situation, right? Like Paul Rubens, the man, is this very quiet control freak that like everything was super methodically planned and blah, 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 but would escape into this character that was just nonstop chaotic childlike energy.
Yeah, but you know what else? Like, it was a quote that I wrote down as well that I think was maybe my favorite from the entire thing, because you're absolutely right. What you're talking about is, if you looking at it just from an abstract perspective, the Weird Al persona that he puts on in these moments that you see in the Complete Al, that you see in Weird a lot, is that he is a typical rock and roll douche, right? Like, he loves to project the idea that he is this, like, you know, burning his accordion and getting drunk and being shitty to people. Like, he loves that idea, and you never question like where he's really at, because he is just so. The line Steve J, his bass player, at one point says that he uses the line, he projects heart.
Yeah.
And everybody loves him. I think that is the perfect way to describe Al. It is like the joy and the love is just pouring out of him and everything that he does. Like, you could never misconstrue, even when he's doing something satirical, and even when he is being arrogant and pompous on camera, you can just still feel all of the love and the sincerity coming out of him, like, behind all that. Like, you don't buy it. It works, and you can laugh at it because it's so obviously untrue.
Yeah.
Because of who is down there. Like, it's just so incredibly obvious, like, the person who he is underneath, which oddly makes the comedy of it even better. Like, it all lands so perfectly, and it's just because, like, Al's he projects heart. Well, I think that is the best line ever.
100%. We get this really very brief. I don't even know if this was archive. I'm going to assume this is archive. I can't imagine that VH1 sat down with Stan Freberg for one quote in this Weird Al documentary.
I know. I was surprised it was there. My understanding is that Stan Freberg really did not like to do interviews at all.
Yeah.
But there's very little with Stan.
But he says, because they're talking about the influence of Spike Jonze and Stan Freberg, and he says, I felt the same way about Al that I had heard Spike Jonze felt about me, which was, who is this smartass that's coming up behind me to surpass me? Like, and I mean, that goes all the way back to the very first episode we did of this podcast, where I'm like, there are equal parts Stan Freberg and Spike Jonze in almost everything that Al does. And then Al uses, I have described Spike Jonze this way, and he says in here, like, listening to Spike Jonze, it's like having a circus in your head. And that is like, if you listen to those records, that is what it feels like, where you're just like, what is going on?
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's crazy. It's crazy material.
The other person who shows up for just a millisecond, but I wrote his name down in all caps. Do you know who pops up for 1 second for one quick talking head?
I wrote a couple, but who are you referring to?
Harvey Leeds.
Harvey Leeds.
Al's favorite person to bring up regularly.
That is true.
And this is I forgot that Joel Miller, who is like one of Al's oldest friends, they don't talk about it in the doc, but I'm like, that's the name of the kid who finds the marble in the oatmeal in UHF, is little Joel Miller, which I'm like,
that's right.
love that. I love that, like, he named this weird character, this one-shot character after one of his oldest friends, and then blows him in the face with a fire hose.
Yeah, I had forgotten too that that was like the first show Al ever played.
Yeah.
Was him and Joel Miller, and Joel Miller played bongos. And that was just like the earliest gig, like doing like coffee houses at his college. Him and Joel Miller would perform, and they talked like he just accordion and bongos, and people would be like, what is going on with these two people? But a really important person. I love that he's in this a bunch, because he's not someone I've seen I've heard much from in my research so far, and truly seems like a foundational person for Al in terms of like getting started.
He
on
has
stages.
a lot of good quotes in these earlys. The two things that I wrote down that I liked is he says he's never done drugs. We once tried to get him to do drugs and he refused, but I think that the drugs probably would have made him normal. And then he talks about Al's valedictorian speech, which I forgot about, where Al, I mean, let's keep in mind, Al graduated from high school at the age of 16.
I know. They kind of gloss over that in the piece, but it is obvious. Like, he graduated as valedictorian at 16.
Yeah. That's insane.
So that is a smart man.
That is a very smart person. But he says Al's valedictorian speech was about how the polar ice caps are eventually going to melt and drown us all, and they pulled him off the stage.
They pulled him off stage. Incredible. I mean, that is, oh my God, that's amazing. I know, I loved that tidbit too. I wrote that down. Like what a thing. The little glimpses, again, we've said before how like the real Al and character Al, like it's a blurry line between these things. And sometimes it's obvious where he's being pompous and whatnot, but he's been cautious about his, like, you know, generally speaking, he's not super political and he doesn't talk about those kinds of things in a public setting, but there's enough evidence
if you're
from throughout the
speaking
years.
about polar ice caps in the 80s,
no, forget about it.
There's no way that I don't have a pretty good idea how Al votes. But the other thing that I had to write down, and I don't want to gloss over it because it's another thing that we don't really get to talk about much on this show.
Yeah.
Well, I'll start with this. Every time that they're interviewing Al's parents, it makes me just want to cry knowing like what eventually happened to them is so horrifying. But man, do you get such insight on like, and Al like kind of jokes about it, but his mom was very protective and overbearing on her child. Like they talk about her, like if there was anything even slightly promiscuous in a magazine, she would color over top of it. That she would watch him through binoculars at school because her house was across the street. Like
the censoring, like, and he said it wasn't even like pornographic. It was just like
a girl
clothing
in a bathing
catalogs
suit.
with exactly, bathing suits, and she would Sharpie over like. So that's a lot. But the idea that their house was across the street and Al is telling the story of his mother would literally sit on the porch with binoculars and watch him, like playing with his friends. I was like, wow. I mean, that's a lot.
Yeah.
And they gloss over, they really don't make too much of it in this, but you definitely get the very strong sense. I mean, Joel straight up says like that Al was picked on a lot. This is in college. Like, I'm not even talking about younger, like that Al was, I mean, it seems like they tell the origin of like, college people in his dorm room who gave him the term Weird Al, and it was only rooted in the odd look he gave people as he walked down the hallways.
Yeah, because they thought that he could be a killer. Like
they said he looked like he could be an insane person.
Yeah.
And they just started calling him Weird Al. And it didn't seem like, I mean, that didn't seem playful. The way it's described in this thing, it does not sound like it was done in a playful way. It sounds like Al might have taken that moniker and owned it in a way to deflect a little bit.
Yeah.
What people were saying about him.
Which, like, not for nothing, man, what a roll of the dice you're taking. if you're like, hey, this guy seems like he's a little unhinged, let's publicly give him a nickname that we call him to his face to let him know. Like, luckily, it turns out Al's the nicest man in the world, but that's also the origin story of a school shooting. Like,
I mean, well, this is the thing, right? And we've gone over it, like, we've discussed versions of this in the past on the show, but it's like, yeah, if you are that type of a kid, I grew up not excessively bullied or picked on, but I definitely was not a cool kid, and I dealt with a lot of that in especially my youngest years. Like middle school was pretty
sucks
not
for
great
everybody.
For me.
Unless you were like the coolest kid in the world, middle school sucks.
I've managed to find enough of my own little like sort of pocket of friends that I got through like later years, kind of just by sticking with my little group. But yeah, I mean, it sends people a couple different ways, and even for me, I think when you find yourself like, oh, people don't seem to like me inherently.
Yeah.
And then you find something to try to make them like you, or at least find a place for yourself of like, what can I do? And then, so for me, that became playing music, but comedy is a very common part of that. Like, these kids are making fun of me. What if by making the joke yourself, you start controlling the narrative, right? Like now you're taking control of a situation. Like, well, if they're going to laugh, I want to be in charge of what they're laughing at.
The Kevin Smith thing. He used to always talk about like, I would be the first one to make fat jokes about myself because it like it almost took the power away from the bullies.
Exactly.
They'd be like, well,
you're disarming them if they can't make fun of you if you're making fun of yourself. There's nothing left for them to say. And it's like the only way to stop. In some cases, it's like one of the most effective ways to stop bullying. But it is a reason why the certain types of people wind up in these fields. It's because they're kind of pushed into it. And I'm sure a version of that absolutely happened for Al. I think it's just interesting that you see this sort of through his friends' talking points, but one of the interesting things about this whole piece were the things that Al's friends and family said about him as opposed to the stuff Al talks about himself.
Yes.
Al does not talk at all about his childhood.
He's just focused on his career for almost the entire talking
He talks about his mother keeping a close eye on him, but he doesn't seem to say it through a lens of like, oh my God, it was a horrible childhood. He's kind of laughing and being like, yeah, so it was, I was a bit of a sheltered kid.
Yeah.
And that's normal and not that
Yeah, he
strange,
even makes the joke about like the door-to-door salesman had a guitar and an accordion, and they thought that I really needed help with my popularity and got me the accordion.
Yes, exactly. So yeah, making fun of them a little bit, but also acknowledging that was what gave him a career.
Yeah.
I mean, God knows if they had given him a guitar, who knows what would have happened.
Wish you could become a morning person? You know the type, up before the sun, early morning runs, first one to the office with donuts and a smile. How do they do it? Easy. With the new Galaxy Watch 8, sleep tracking and personalized insights from Samsung Health help you improve so you can wake up to a whole new you. One who, dare I say it, skips the snooze? It's possible. Train your sleep with Galaxy Watch 8. Learn more at Samsung.com. Requires compatible Samsung Galaxy phone, Samsung Health app, and Samsung account.
This podcast is supported by FX's English Teacher. Last year's critically acclaimed series returns to follow Evan, Gwen, and Marky as they vie for their students' divided attention. See why Cosmopolitan called its premiere season a masterclass of comedy, while Glamour raved it's the year's funniest and most heartwarming new comedy series. FX's English Teacher, all new Thursdays on FX. All episodes now streaming on Hulu.
No one should have to choose between their own safety and their pets. But nearly half of domestic abuse survivors delay leaving because they can't bring their pets with them. Purina is helping to create more pet-friendly domestic violence shelters through the Purple Leash Project, so survivors and their pets can escape and heal together. Visit Purina.com/purple to learn more.
This episode is brought to you by Nespresso and Samra Origins by the Weekend Coffee Collection.
Introducing Samra Origins. My collaboration with Nespresso is a connection to my roots, to my mother, Samra. Coffee that hits the right notes. It transports you. Crafted with unique notes and bold, soaring flavors. Experience a taste that moves you. Nespresso and Samra Origins.
Discover more at Nespresso.com.
For a limited time at McDonald's, get a Big Mac Extra Value Meal for $8. That means 2 all-beef patties, special sauce, lettuce, cheese, pickles, onions on a sesame seed bun, and medium fries, and a drink. We may need to change that jingle.
Prices and participation may vary.
Hello everyone, we're Superhero Stuff You Should Know, and if you think you know about superheroes and comic books, think again.
We got romance, we got action,
Romance?
we got comedy, we got everything you need, man. Come on down to Superhero Stuff You Should Know for all your superhero needs.
I don't know about this romance. What part are you talking about?
We've got all kinds of sketches, and then deep dives on top of that. Come on down to Superhero Stuff You Should Know.
All right, so come on down to... Wait, why did I say come on down? To Superhero Stuff You Should Know.
So another story that they tell here that I can't remember if we talked about, it felt like new information to me, is they talk about, he sends these songs to Dr. Demento, he's growing in popularity, but then My Bologna is like this first like huge thing, gets to the Knack. Yes. They're the ones that go to Capitol Records and like, you got to sign this kid. But then Al tells the story of like, and then by just a stroke of luck, the Knack is playing at my college. And they want to meet me backstage, and then it cuts to Doug from the Knack, and he goes, and there's Al with a giant bologna in his hand waiting for us.
I loved hearing Doug Feiger from the Knack talk about Al. Like, again, when we talked about this back in the day, you just got to give all the credit in the world. If Doug had not heard My Bologna and been like, this is hilarious, if he was like, what, and just ignored it, we would not have a Weird Al today. It was truly like we owe it to Doug for hearing that and thinking it was good enough that it warranted everyone to hear it.
We also get a little bit more. We've talked about this infamous show, but I don't think I ever knew the details of it.
The missing person
show and how badly it went. Like we always talk about, like, oh, they played this infamous like polka medley of like all these punk and new wave bands. Like, I wish we could find footage of this. And then you find out, man, did that crowd not give a shit about
another Steve J quote that I wrote down. He said, "They hated us to the fullest."
And then Al tells that story about the kid after the show. He goes, this 12-year-old kid comes up and goes, "Are you Weird Al?" And I said, "Yeah." And he just goes, "You suck."
That literally sounds like that could have been out of UHF or Weird, right? Like that is truly out of one of his movies. It's incredible. Yeah, I mean, and it's funny because they're telling this story and you can see they're laughing about it in hindsight, but you can also really see in their faces they're like, this was a bad day. This was really not okay at the time.
What I don't think I realized the Missing Person show was the first show for them as a band. Like,
that is crazy. No, I didn't fully put that together either. I wrote down, I was surprised that I had not fully appreciated that was their first like actual gig. And where Al said, again, they were getting $500. This was a big deal. The whole band like really doing it. And yeah, I mean,
honestly, $500 in 1982.
That's not bad for an opening act.
That's not bad at all.
There are bands taking opening gigs for less than that today.
I was going to say, there are bands that make less than $500 a show right now.
Doing their first ever show? Absolutely. Yeah. Oh, my God. But also, again, imagine, like, in this time, Missing Persons, like, there's just no context for someone like Al. He shows up on that stage with the accordion and does this polka medley of all of these songs. I don't know, like, what in the world could that audience have thought? They must have been like, what, are we on a prank show right now? What is happening?
We do get into where things are working out for Al, though. MTV comes around, kind of plucks Al out of, kind of obscurity, a very niche level of fame, and makes him huge. And he has this great line where he goes, "I was a jerk in L.A. who made silly records, but after MTV, I was a recognizable jerk from L.A. who made silly records." Just another one of those great pieces of Al wordplay. We do get probably, I would say this is the most famous line from this entire special, is the interview about Devo and
oh yes,
he goes, he resculpted that song into something else, and I hate him about it, basically.
And you know what? So VH1 plays that clip. It comes up multiple times in like the pre-roll and stuff, and they're obviously using it to play for dramatic effect. And I love the fact, like, I think the way that is presented, they are trying to make it as this like scandalous, oh my God, these guys hate each other moment. And I'm sure I said this when we talked about Dare to Be Stupid, but it is so obvious to me when you see that Mark Mothersbaugh clip that he is saying that line out of admiration and respect for having essentially been beaten at his own game by Al in that song. But VH1 keeps showing the clip of him, like, music drops out, and it just cuts to Mark Mothersbaugh going, "I hate him for it."
Yeah.
And it's like, no, you don't.
No, you
don't really.
Not at all.
It's just a very, like, I mean, he gave them a great line. If they were looking for drama for their show, he gave them exactly what they wanted. I also, I wrote down, I don't know who said this. It might have just been the narrator, but then when they were talking about the, I think it was the Eat It video, he drops another line that I absolutely loved where he said the video was a buffet for buffoons. The number of just like silly lines. I love that.
Insane. Al talks about, after this, we go through Dare to Be Stupid, then we talk about Polka Party.
Polka Party being his first disappointment.
And Al says something that I think we both felt while listening to that album, and I think we probably said across those 10 albums, or those 10 episodes, but he's like, there was pressure on me that, I didn't have time to take a break because I'd be forgotten. And he's like, and we put out an album that is kind of lukewarm, essentially.
Yes.
But then he does have this quote that is so sadly accurate still, but he says, "Every album I put out is a comeback album."
Yes. I wrote that too because I love that line, because I think that is, we've talked about how that is absolutely true for him. Like he often, even in these early days where he was gone for a couple of years at a time, now now is different, but then it became much longer stretches where it just gave him the opportunity to reintroduce himself every time. And I think he learned over the years to use that to his advantage.
Yeah.
At this moment in time, maybe it was still sort of being calibrated, but you can tell like there's power in that, in letting people forget about you and then coming back and just like whacking them over the head with something that didn't know they wanted.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Did you catch that there is because it's Weird Al and he can't help himself, a subtle Prince dig in this.
Oh, the Purple Rain line when he's talking about UHF.
Yeah,
I had not heard that before, and I loved that line so much. It cuts to a segment about UHF, which is another, again, behind the music, so they're going over the ups and downs of the career, and UHF is classed as it's classed as a massive misfire.
30 years into 45 minutes, it is rapid
they move
fire
quickly.
information.
They move quickly, but they get to UHF, and Al is doing some interview back in the day about what UHF should be, and he said it's like Purple Rain, only my movie is intentionally funny. Which is a great diss to Purple Rain, I have to say. I feel like
phenomenal. I love Purple Rain.
I love Purple Rain too, but I think that now people now look back on Purple Rain and watch it through the exact lens that Al is talking about. And I think at the time it came out, it didn't have that quite the same way. I think it was a little bit more self-important and a little bit more, again, it was a perfect thing for Al to make fun of.
The other part in this UHF segment that is kind of a pretty well-beloved scene is Emo Phillips showing off the residual check that he gets for UHF of 30 cents. And I've heard tale of similar situations. There was a Christian punk band named Goaty Hook that had a song called My Bike that made it onto an episode of MTV Road Rules. And I remember following their guitarist who wrote the song on Facebook, and one day he just posted a picture of a check for 15 cents. And he said, it appears that MTV has replayed the episode of Road Rules that my bike is on.
It's so painful. I mean, and it's just a sad reality. We do it in the music world all the time. Brendan does okay. He wrote a song people seem to really like. But for the rest of us who write songs, usually you get BMI payouts for streaming royalties. And it's like, oh, look at that. I got $3 this month. That's pretty good. That's a very good month. It's like, oh wow, someone somewhere was really listening.
I mean, even in our field, even in our world,
oh, true, podcasting too.
The podcast ads, we get paid 5 cents a listen, I think, for most of the ads that are on the show.
And we love all of our listeners, every one of you. Just so you know, right now as you are listening to this, we are sharing a nickel.
Yeah, we are. We're splitting a nickel between the two of us.
And you know what? We're very fair. At least I think we are. Matt Kelly handles all the finances. I trust him. I don't need to see the numbers at all. I know Matt Kelly's not going to take more than his fair share. What a guy.
Listen, we almost have enough money to get someone to shave our back in Albuquerque.
Hey, there you go. Waka waka doo doo, yeah.
So then they really there's a point where they start talking about Smells Like Nirvana, and I just did a quick time check, and I'm like, there is 5 minutes left in this special.
Oh, and they really zip through the end, yeah.
They really speed run the end of this, but we get the famous, is it going to be about food? No, it's going to be about how no one understands your songs. This is, I think, the first time we've heard that version of the story.
Yes, but it's nice. There's also a good talking head with Chris Novoselic.
I was going to say, we get some archival footage of him from when it came out. Yeah.
And saying how much they liked it, which is cool to see. It's fun having this sort of compilation thing put together.
Victoria Jackson, who apparently still in 1999 when this was produced, did not remember who Nirvana and Smells Like Teen Spirit was.
Come on, Victoria Jackson. Pretending she doesn't know the name Smells Like Teen Spirit. Victoria Jackson. Relax.
Yeah, calm down.
It's fine.
This is also where I think we first, as a group of humans, learned that Flea was not a fan of Bedrock Anthem.
Yeah, this is the first. We've talked about that quote before, but I couldn't remember the last time I actually saw the video clip of Flea saying it. Yeah. And yeah, it's funny. He's being very honest, and I actually appreciate the fact that he's like, I like Al. He's like, I am a fan of his work. He's like, but and he's like, I mean, I don't know. I didn't think it was that good. What did you think? Yeah. To the interviewer. And I was like, I actually appreciated that. And at the very end, and he's like, it's fine. I like Al. Everybody's hit and miss, besides me, of course.
Yeah.
And that's how the segment ends. Like, all right, Flea, well done. Fair enough.
But then we do I think my favorite piece of this entire special is in the last 2 minutes, where they summarize all the stuff up to Bad Hair Day, and then very sincerely, the the behind the music voiceover guy is just like, and despite all of this, Al still hasn't found that special someone. and like,
another segment where Al says nothing. Like they might have said to Al, like, Al, do you want to talk about your dating life? And he was like, absolutely not.
The only thing he says is that his family, sometimes it's come up in his own family, like, well, he's almost 40 and he's still alone. So, he lives in Hollywood. He could be. But then we get the Emo Phillips line where he says, geniuses like him and me have special needs from a woman. And I won't get into the rest of that bit, but just hearing Emo Phillips say that line alone just made me laugh out loud.
I loved that too. And it's just very on brand for behind the music at the time. Like they have to pull it in that direction. But yeah, a little footnote at the very end. And he must have gotten married shortly after this, right?
Like, I was going to say, I think he started dating someone when Running with Scissors was out. Because
they he and his wife Suzanne met in 2001.
Yeah.
So if this is 1999, then very shortly after this, he met, and then they had their daughter in 2003.
And then the very end, the last thing Al says, he's talking about doing music, and he just says, as long as people aren't sick of it, I'll keep doing it. And here we are 25 years later, and he has been true to that word. Honestly.
He really has. And as we approach the end of this, the one other thing that came up in this a couple times that I just wanted to mention, because we were talking about, we're just like at the end of the Al TV era, effectively. And this is even like, this is before the end of the era, but we're now in it, in the show. And they make the point in this multiple times of just how incredibly important MTV was to Weird Al's career.
Yeah.
And music videos specifically. And, in this show, we've been ranking the videos. We've been talking about them quite a bit, but I don't think we have actually said that specifically. And I did think it's a really good point that's worth noting is like when Al came up, a huge part of what made this work was the perfect timing of MTV and music videos becoming a thing. Because the videos to go along with the parodies, it just opened this door. It was all such uncharted territory at the time that Al coming along and spoofing the stuff was critical to it all actually working. And that's even ignoring the Al TV stuff where he got to expand his comedy even further. Like, it made me consider for a moment, you really can't talk about Al's career without talking about how unbelievably important music videos and MTV were to him.
Yeah. 100%.
It's a really amazing, and it's kind of sad. And we were talking about how things have changed and Al's not even putting out music and MTV is gone. I mean, it's almost like these waves. Al has outlived MTV for sure, but I don't think it's a coincidence that as this culture has shifted and MTV has essentially died, Al's method of making his stuff and getting his things out there has also had to change in a pretty significant way.
I mean, Al says this even at the Polka Party portion of it, where he's like, I thought that it was the end of me when Polka Party failed, but I thought, hey, you've had a more successful career than some of the artists you've parodied.
Yeah,
and it's
that's absolutely
true.
true.
That was 4 years into his career, he had already checked that box. So
they say it in this as well, which is like when he first came out and people heard the first couple songs, like who in the world would have thought he would be doing this decades later? Nothing about this indicates longevity. And they're saying how hard it was. They talk about how difficult it was for them to get a record deal because no record company could see a scenario where this was long-term profitable. It just didn't make any sense. He proved everybody wrong.
Well, no wonder, obviously Al keeps all of his people you very rarely hear stories of Al walking away from it. I think Rick Derringer's probably the only person from the start of his career that he's truly walked away from, quote unquote.
That's true, yeah. And then he did leave his label as soon as he could.
Yeah, but no wonder he's kept Jay as his manager since 81 because Jay was one of the only ones that saw that this wasn't going to be a flash. No agent's going to take a flash in the pan novelty act as a client. So he saw that there was more to it than that. And
yeah, absolutely.
And I think that there's a lot of love to loyalty in Al.
I agree completely. And yeah, for people who have not seen this, I remembered watching this as a kid and loving it, but this was such a fun throwback. I would strongly recommend to our listeners watch this.
It's on
this
YouTube
is really,
with
really
almost
worth
no
it.
commercial interruptions at all.
On
it's
YouTube,
great.
it's a perfect cut. I mean, it looks like you're watching old television, which if you're old like me, is a wonderful nostalgic throwback at this point to put on AirPlay in my home. Yeah, no, I had a blast watching it, and truly, it is like one of the most sincere discussions about Al's actual life and career you can find. I love the snarky fake stuff. Like I'll watch Weird all the time and I love all that. But if you want to actually get some real insight, I feel like you really see Al and you really get to talk to people about him with a sincerity that is rare.
Yeah, no, 100%.
It's great.
We just talked so much about how important MTV was to Weird Al. So next week, we're going to talk about an Al TV that didn't air on MTV. So stay tuned. Stay tuned for that.
Boy.
You're listening to the Geekscape Network.